This 4-step framework guides you to the best move, more wins, and less blunders. Even then, President Joe Biden has blunders. I view blunders in the same light he views the Affordable Care Act. We're heading back to 2010, where I was younger and dumber. A beautiful year when Joe Biden won the top political blunder of the year. We also revisit the top song, top TV show, forgotten pop culture, and more. All this while sharing the elusive secrets of how to blunder less. Stick to the end where it's all wrapped up in my How to Make Chess Easy guide. The beginning of a chess game is often a race to develop your pieces as quickly as possible. My opponent here moves his knight twice. It's often best to move each of your pieces once before you move it a second time. And then I immediately follow it up with a bunch of pawn moves. So I'm using these pawn moves in order to gain the center, but instead of these two pawn moves, maybe I could have moved my bishop over, castled. That could have been a little bit better. I would have been even further ahead on development. My opponent develops his bishop. He is threatening e5. I think each move, okay, what would my opponent's last move just do? Right now he's threatening that pawn, so I defend it. Now he moves his bishop out. Now, what did this change? Now he's pinning my knight to the king. I can't move my knight because I'd be in check. So what does that mean? It means this pawn is undefended again. So again, I defend it. He moves his knight forward. He's attacking this g7 pawn, and I castle in order to make that defense. He makes a threat. I defend it. I make a threat. Maybe he has to defend it. Let's see if I'm able to get it to that point in the game at a certain point. Knight moves forward. I defend that. I still have a little bit of central control. I'm moving forward. And right now my opponent's threatening checkmate here on h7. Now there's a couple different ways to defend against it, and oftentimes the best way to defend is the most active way. So the most active way here is actually f5, and now I'm threatening to move e4 on that next move, getting even more space. Instead of that, I move h6. It's a little bit more passive, and it doesn't create any counter threats immediately. My opponent moves up to g4. I move my knight in. I'm trying to get that bishop out of the game. I'm able to remove him. And right now I have my own threat. I am lined up on the king. I am pinning that knight, and I'm threatening d4. I would win a piece in that case. My opponent sees it. He sidesteps out of the way, and I make a bit of a mistake here. I move over to the edge of the board, and it's a mistake due to king safety. My bishop's moved over to the side of the board. It's no longer involved in the defense. My opponent has 2 pieces already bearing down here on my king. Potentially his other pieces are going to arrive really quickly, and my rook right here is not really in a great position to defend against that, nor is my bishop, nor is this rook. So it's going to get really scary here. After this g5 move, I capture, which is a big mistake. Previously, I had 3 pawns forming a great shield for my king. This is already weakening, and it allows my opponent to attack, move forward. He's got both pieces in. He's going to bring his other rook, and now it's just going to be too much for my king to defend. And what do I decide to do? I decide to double down and make it even worse. I force his knight to move, and what is his knight naturally going to do? Well, he's going to join the attack as well. I make a trade. I try to go for gusto. I try to attack and, maybe win this rook, but my queen was playing a critical role defending this f6 square, and my opponent's able to slide in and deliver checkmate with his knight, which also is super cool. Congratulations to him. The 4 secrets to blundering less and winning more, you just saw 2.5 of them. It's not quite as complicated as making some blue wonder drug like the best show of 2010 was in Breaking Bad. At the beginning of the game, we mobilize our pieces and we get them ready. And what do we get them ready for? I'll show you right here in this next game. As we jump into it, this game is going to immediately devolve into chaos. After all these trades, my opponent gets this cool check in. This is really common. Black can also look for those checks on h4. So it's often best to, get your knight planted here on f6 or f3 to prevent those checks. That doesn't happen in this game. I push forward here, and my opponent captures this e5 pawn. So what's he doing? He is threatening this h8 rook, but he's also threatening e6. There's a way to defend against both of those, with my queen, going right here. I don't do that. I move my knight, and after just a little bit, my opponent, he's up by 2 pawns already. But I have some advantages going for me. I got both my pieces out. He's got all of his pieces there along the back rank. Let's see what happens. We both castle, and now that I've got all my pieces developed, what do I do? What do I do with my pieces? What's the best place to put for them? Well, I want to look for checks, captures, and attacks. Checks and captures, particularly, those are the most forcing, and I miss an opportunity to do that right now. A great move would be, moving bishop to c5. That's a check, and my opponent, he can't really block it this way or this way. He'd just be giving up material, so he'd be forced to move to h1, and now, my bishop's in a better spot than it was before. I'm more on the offensive. Instead of that, I move my knight forward to g4. Moving forward's not always a bad idea. We make a trade, and again, I have the opportunity for this bishop to c5 move, but this time it comes with a forced checkmate. Obviously, if my opponent moves back here, this is checkmate on the back rank. So what he would need to do instead is give up his bishop for free. And after I, recapture with check, if he goes back here, it's a difficult checkmate to find. So I'll just give you just a couple of seconds to see if you can see it. It's really fun, actually. It's check, only move, check, only move again, and now it's a back rank checkmate. But even if you didn't see that back rank checkmate, you would be winning a free bishop right here. Again, instead of that, I move my rook over to the 7th rank. The 7th rank's often very, very good, very powerful for the rook to be up there. My opponent attacks my bishop. I am double attacking this h2 pawn, and my opponent makes a bit of a misstep. He should be defending with g3 or in some other way. Instead of that, he pushes here, and I am able to find this checkmate to checkmate in 2, check with the bishop, and checkmate with my rook. Chess is all about making decisions. It may not be as important as LeBron James's The Decision, the most overhyped news story of basically the entire year, nor is it obscure as the Nook color. I'm sure you forgot that existed. I owned one and I forgot they existed. This next game completes my decision tree for how I decide what my next move is. Okay, so I'm picking up this game after most of the pieces are developed. We can see that I'm a little bit further forward, and my opponent has this bad bishop back here, and so I actually make a pretty bad mistake. Usually, when I'm up on space, I want to, develop my pieces more, build up even more of an attack, and start going after my opponent, because black's going to have a really, really hard time developing here. Instead of that, I push forward, and we can see here after just a couple of trades, I don't even have an advantage anymore. I used to have this big space advantage, and after this liquidation, then it just doesn't exist anymore. So if you're cramped, if you're backwards, then making those trades is going to help you out. But if you're on the attack, don't make any trades. It's going to make the job of your opponent a whole lot easier. I don't really have any great captures. I don't really have any great checks. I don't have any checks. The only capture I have is this one. That's not going to be very good. And so my next decision point is, well, what is my worst piece? How can I improve my worst piece? So which one's not involved in the game? Right now, well, this one's not that great. It's not doing too much, but my worst piece is my A1 rook. It's just looking at the back of a pawn. So I move it over here, and after this trade, now what's my worst piece? Well, yeah, it's this bishop, and I can also attack the queen while improving the bishop. It's right along this diagonal against the king. That's great. And I step it back here. It stays along this diagonal, and it opens up my queen and my rook along this file. So improving my pieces each step of the way. After I kick the knight back, I improve my E1 rook. I move it up to the 7th rank. I already mentioned the 7th rank is great for your rooks. And with this queen attack of the rook, I'm going to give you just a second here. What is the best move? There's 2 possible ideas that could be good for you. If you found the fun one, that's going to be queen up here to c7. It's getting both my pieces along the 7th rank. Of course, you could have, captured the pawn. That's always great. Who doesn't like free pawns? So my opponent trades. I get both my rooks along the 7th rank, and it is actually an overwhelming advantage. I'm able to grab that and grab here, and now I'm threatening all sorts of discoveries with my rook. I could just pick up the knight and have a check, so the king has to move over. I pick up a pawn here, and my opponent resigns because I'm up too much material and should be able to convert this in the endgame. If you want your chess elo to trend up like the total number of Facebook users in 2010, yeah, admit it, you had a Facebook back then. Everybody did. We're going to check out one more decision point on whether or not I want to trade pieces. Okay, we're again starting in the middle of the game. I'm already castled on the queen side. I've got a pawn shield right here. My opponent doesn't have anywhere to put his king if he goes king side or if he goes queen side. He doesn't have as good a pawn shield as I do, so, maybe I'm going to have a bit of a safer king. We trade in the middle, and right now I've got both my queen and my bishop attacking this f7 square. My opponent moves back in order to defend with both of these. It looks really ugly, but the computer says that that's the best move. I move my rook forward. I'm trying to activate my pieces as much as I can. Both my queen and my bishop are ideally placed, and I line up against the queen. And right now, I am threatening this check of the king to pick up the queen. But I'm also threatening, just picking up this pawn in order to, get a free pawn. So my opponent checks, moves over, castles. I am able to get that pawn. And after he moves over here, my next principle I always want to look at is, hey, if I'm up material, I should be able to win the game. I should be able to make as many trades as I can. So I trade. I'm up 2 pawns. If my opponent takes and recaptures here, I can go here, and eventually move my pawns all the way forward. I should be able to get a pretty easy win here, up so many pawns. But instead of that, my opponent misses the other threat in the position. He moves his queen over, and then I pick up that rook. I am up so much material. After I win this pawn, my opponent resigns the game. Now, I have to apologize, but not quite as loudly and publicly as Tiger Woods did back in 2010. Mine's more of a meek and desperate apology for missing this blunder at the end of this game. I'm sure you're going to be able to see it, but I wasn't. We're starting right here where my opponent walks right into a pin of my rook, and so I'm sure you can see the best move here to take advantage of that. Of course, it's f3. We are picking up a piece for free, which is great. Now I move my queen over. I'm double attacking both pawns. My opponent defends one of them. I capture the other one, and I am up a bunch of material right now. But after this move, I don't see the threat in the air. What did that queen move change? Well, he is threatening this h2 square, or rather defending this h2 square. So when I naturally move over to line up against the queen, my opponent takes immediate advantage, back rank, and I have to give up my queen. My opponent's able to take down this game. As I noted up top, I'm going to make an easy to understand, what do I do next? How do I make chess easy guide? Let me know in the comments what you think about it. The first thing you want to do, you want to think about 2 things every single move. Number 1, what did my opponent just do? What changed on the board? Do I need to address anything? And then number 2, do I have any checks or captures, attacks, forcing moves? If not, I need to improve my worst piece and good things are going to happen. And then number 3 and 4, I only think about these every, 2 to 3 moves as time allows, depending on the time format. The first one being, do I want to trade material? I only really want to trade if I'm being attacked, if I'm being forced back, or if I'm up material, then I definitely want to trade material. And then, the opposite of that is conversely true. And the other thing I want to think about every couple of moves is my king safe? Do I have a good shield? And am I completely outnumbered? Does my opponent have 2 or 3 extra pieces than I do to defend my king? That's going to be a problem if I do. That's how I make a complicated game simple, at least for myself. If you want to, check out my other videos. I got opening videos. I've got stuff on middle game and end game for beginners. And then I got a bunch of advanced concepts too. I hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you around here soon. Da 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 da